Well, France has agreed to grant more autonomy to New Caledonia, but stopped short of the full independence sought by many indigenous Kanaks. French President Emmanuel Macron agreed to create a state of Caledonia within the French Republic, as well as acknowledging Caledonian nationality. But will this come to fruition? Denise Fisher is a visiting fellow at ANU and former Australian consul-general in New Caledonia. Denise, good evening. Good to have you with us today. Firstly, can I get your thoughts on what Emmanuel Macron is proposing here for New Caledonia, and what are some of the provisions that stand out to you?
Well, firstly, this is quite a historic agreement that has been concluded after lots of negotiation over the last 10 days in a little town outside of Paris. It's historic because it's put an end to a deep impasse between the two sides, pro-France and pro-independence within New Caledonia, and an agreement with France itself. It's one of a series of agreements over the last 30 years. If it comes to fruition, it will represent further stability, not just in New Caledonia, Australia's closest neighbour off the eastern Queensland coast, but also it will shore up France's respect in the region and continued role, not just in the Pacific region, but in the Indo-Pacific, which it bases on its sovereignty within the two oceans. So it has wider implications than just settling a local issue. But also it is highly creative. It is, as you say, the creation of a new state, a new Pacific state within the Pacific, but within the bosom of the Republic of France. And what it represents is kind of the best possible agreement between France, the pro-independence parties, and the pro-France parties in New Caledonia, the best that they could come up with in a very difficult situation. And all three have made significant concessions.
Yeah, so does this mean that this deal is enough to satisfy New Caledonia's indigenous Kanak people? And are those who have always sought independence now willing to forego that?
Well, the independence parties within New Caledonia itself issued a statement today, which is similar in some ways to the statement by the loyalist parties. They say, we accept this agreement. We see that this is the best we can achieve at the moment. We know that we're not going to have a vote on independence, which we've wanted. We know that it is short of independence, but it is on the trajectory towards full sovereignty. And what they mean by that is the creative creation within this agreement of a new state where the local people will be able to decide on the name of the new state, on its flag, on its national anthem, on the shape of its voting, including a double nationality for the first time within France, a double nationality, a Caledonian citizenship and a French citizenship coinciding. But it will also give to this new state the power not only to take over a new responsibility of foreign affairs, this is the first step, but also there is a mechanism by which they can take over from France progressively further elements of core sovereignty which France continues to retain at the moment. So it's kind of the best, and this is what Emmanuel Macron was saying, no one's going to be 100% satisfied with this.
Yes. Now, I know we are at the very early stage, but this firstly needs to pass both houses of the French Parliament, but then it goes into a referendum to New Caledonia. So do you expect, finally a referendum to pass after so many attempts at it had failed?
Well, I think there lies the rub. I think we have got this creative agreement that has been signed on to with major concessions by France itself, creating this new state within the indivisible French Republic, creating double nationality within an indivisible one person, one vote of the French Republic. These compromises by the pro-France groups within New Caledonia, when at least they've achieved staying within France, but they've also had to accept this double nationality, which they didn't want to accept. And also the independence leaders foregoing the vote on independence in favour of a vote in February about this accord itself. But there's a lot of scope for problems between now and then, and even thereafter. because, as you've said, this was a great concession by the French state, this novel idea of creating a new state within France. That needs constitutional change. That means the two houses of the French Parliament have to meet and agree. Already, as we know, the National Assembly in France is very fragile at the moment. There is no clear majority between three political groupings. And the leader of one of them, Marine Le Pen, has already said she's not happy with this agreement and wants to modify it when it goes before the French Parliament. That's the first thing. Then, of course, the leaders who've signed on to this thing in Paris with great difficulty in the early hours of Saturday morning after 10 days of negotiations now have to go back and secure the support of their supporters for what they've signed on to so that they will support it in the referendum on this agreement in February. Thereafter, a new government will be formed, and they will have to decide on a name, an anthem, all these other things, including the definition of this new nationality. So there are many areas where there's scope for difficulties between these two already deeply divided groupings.
Yes, and those divisions, does it mean that tensions are still sort of simmering in the background because of last year's riot there were deadly riots, and that had to do with the failures of past referendums and efforts to reform the voting process?
Yes, that is, they're still reeling from those developments, which were largely unexpected. There were manifestations and protests, but the young really became involved and their frustrations erupted in this violence. So part of the agreement, there are separate agreements to ensure absolute priority for young people so that they can have full access to education and employment. And as the loyalist leaders have said, we're not 100% satisfied, but this will create the basis for future economic certainty and development backed by France. There will be an agreement for French financial support. There will be a new agreement on the nickel strategy, their major revenue producer, exporting nickel, refining it within New Caledonia and exporting it, including to Europe. So there are the bases for greater economic prosperity, so that the problems that are so too clear in the forefront now from last year will be able to be dealt with in an orderly way.
Yeah, no doubt it'll be an interesting and, if not, a long road ahead for New Caledonia. Denise Fisher, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you, Girish. Bye-bye.